that I've got here. The WSOP bracelet, that was like, was it a 4 or a 5 day event? Or
That was a 2-day event.
2 day event. EPTs are like 5 day events. How do you prepare for these? Because they're long slugs. For a dealer, they can be a long slug. I can only imagine for you guys having to work out ICM, having to work out percentages. Do you eat well? Do you drink well? Obviously, you've just said that it was full fucking party mode for that one.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty party mode for that one. You know, I've had results where I've been an absolute mess and I've still done well in poker tournaments. Like I've full on had panic attacks like before I go play a tournament, and then I go play the tournament and I won it, you know?
Yeah.
So like, I wouldn't say that all those things are super relevant. You know, what matters is practice.
Yeah.
You know, you put in the repetition and you look at the things as just variables, and you're able to remove yourself from the emotions of the situation to a certain extent. You just look at the variables, and, you know, from your practice and your repetition, hopefully you know the right play, you know. And that's really what it comes down to, is just putting in the work, putting in the practice. I mean, like I said, I played a lot of tournaments, 50,000 just on PokerStars alone, probably. And when you've put in that much volume, you know, you learn the right way to handle hands, and your mind doesn't, like, some people that get deep in a tournament and you can watch them, they can't even sit in their chair. You know, they're like getting up and they're like bouncing around, and you're just like, oh man, this guy's drawing dead. This guy can't like even sit in his chair. Like, it's really just the sit in the chair game. If you can just sit in your chair, take it one hand at a time, and just make the best decision you have with the information you have, then like that's what you're doing. You're just trying to make one good decision after another, and not really think too much about the big picture, and just focusing on the task at hand with each individual hand. It sounds cliche. It's almost like what a sports star would say to you know, their answer to like big situation, but it's true. Like, you just focus on what you know, and, you know, you just maybe make good decisions, and the variables will play out the way they're supposed to play out. And you can't control that. You can't control the way the cards run out. You can't control when you get like kings to aces or something, you know, like that just happens. So you just make the best decision you can, let the results handle themselves. And luckily for me in my poker career, the results have handled themselves pretty well. So
just basically be comfortable, and as long as you know ABC.
Yeah, I mean, just stick to the variables. You know, you don't need to be. Some people might get a little nervous, like, oh, I'm playing for this much money. They start thinking about, how is this money going to change my life? And it's like, I don't want to think about that until the end. I don't even really want to look at the payouts until the end. Like, obviously, I know making big pay jumps matters, but like, I want to play for the win. That's always how I've played, and my record shows that, like, when I make final tables, I usually make big results, and I'm playing for the win throughout the tournament. And so I'm constantly pressuring people that maybe are a little more timid, maybe are going to be paying closer attention to ICM, maybe making some folds that they shouldn't be making. And I was certainly a very active player back then. I would just raise like any hand from any position. I didn't even care. Nowadays, you can't do that kind of stuff. So
yeah. So that year was massive for you. You done, as I said, you had the party bracelet. And then fast forward to October 2015, the World Series of Poker Europe was getting held in a place very close to your heart, Berlin. Yeah. And you won that for €883,000. Now, as far as I'm aware, this was quite stacked heavily with some of the best players in the world at the time, primarily because this was then followed by EPT Malta. So it attracted a lot of the big names because they could kind of make it into like a month-long thing where they played Berlin and then they fired over down to Malta.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So when I heard that it was announced that the World Series of Poker Europe was going to be held in Berlin, I was obviously very excited. I mean, Berlin was the place for my first big tournament success, and I'd just come off winning a bracelet, so I was feeling pretty high at that point in time. So I researched the best place to rent, and I rented a place right across the street from Spielbank Berlin. And in the Potsdamer Platz, there's like a McDonald's right across the street, and we had the penthouse apartment above the McDonald's. It was like a 5-bedroom place that we rented. Like, we could go out in the morning and have our coffee, and you could see the line of people lining up to get into the casino. So we could be like, oh, well, there's no rushing to get down there right now. They're not going to start the tournament on time, you know, whatever it may be. So I rented the place, just a bracelet hunt, you know. And I stayed with Jeff Madsen and Dylan Lindy, and yeah, we just put our whole heart and soul into the whole tournament series. I had a few cashes here and there, nothing big. I think I made a run one of the turbo events, and then the main event came around, which was, I think, slightly over 300 entrants. And you're talking like the cream of the crop, like Negranus and Eric Seidels and you know, all the big names that have main event winners and bracelet winners and high rollers. They're all playing this. So like the 10K there honestly had like a much tougher field than like even a EPT 10K high roller, because the EPT 10K high rollers a little more diverse in the expertise level of the players. But this was just a super stacked field. I mean, I had nightmare tables throughout the entire tournament, but you know, I just kept to my make one good decision at a time after another, and stuck to what I do best, which is just controlling my stack and putting the chips in good. And yeah, it worked out pretty well. I ran super hot in that tournament.
Yeah, there was a hand leading up to the final table with Eric Seidel, and you think that the persona or the perception of you having this hand with Vanessa might have played into your hands a little well here?
Yeah, well, I mean, at that point in the tournament, I'd been running extremely well. Like I'd had aces versus queens, aces versus jacks of my friend Oscar Arda, the Turkish player, aces versus tens when we got to the final table of 9 against Johnny, who was a German backer at the time and probably one of the best deuce to 7 triple draw players in the world. I busted him at the final table, aces to tens. And it kind of became like an ongoing joke. Like I just always had aces, you know, and we were playing 7-handed. So it's for the final table of 6. And David Lopez, who was eventual runner-up, was on the button, 1 rotation. He opened, and I looked down at like 9-7 suited, and I did like my mean mug fake tank thing, and thought about 3-betting him. But I have Eric Seidel on my left with like second in chips, you know, and I'm chip leader at the point. So I fold, and Eric Seidel thinks for a bit, and he cuts out a raise, and the kid just snap folds. So I turned to Eric, and I was like, "Oh, I was thinking about raising there too, but I didn't have aces." Ha ha ha. So the next rotation comes around. The same thing happens. David Lopez raises the button, and I look down, and I have 2 red aces. And I cut out a 3-bet after some tanking, of course. And he gets back to Eric Seidel, and you know, there's really not much incentive for him to get in a big confrontation with me at this point. I'm chip leader, he's second in chips. So when he 4-bets me, he cuts out a 4-bet. You know, I really actually think he's pretty strong. I don't think that he's just going to be doing this with like a blocker and just random stuff, because it's kind of ICM suicide. You know, like his chip position's worth so much that pots that I don't open, he can open and take down quite easily with post-flop ICM pressure. So there's really no incentive for him to be getting out of line here. So he cuts out a 4-bet, and obviously the GTO strategy here would be to just call with aces and let him hang himself post-flop. Because if he does have a big pair, he's probably going to put all the chips in post.
Sure.
But, you know, I do get a little worried sometimes. Like, yeah, I have 2 aces in my hand, so the combos of ace-king that he has are cut by a significant amount, but they're still there. Still has 8 combos, right?
Yeah.
Which he has 6 combos of kings, and he has 8 combos of ace-king. And if he does have the hand like that, I don't want him to get off post-flop, because he's not going to hit anything. I have 2 aces in my hand, right? So he's not going to hit a pair. So I 5-bet clicked it on him, which I think a lot of people would say is pretty bad, because the standard would be just a call. And also, realistically speaking, there's only a couple hands I can do this with. Kings and aces, really. Like, that's it. And maybe even kings I don't do that with, because if he does have aces, I don't want to get all the chips in against aces and then just be like, torch my stack, which is worth a ton of money at this point. So I might even just like call kings. But I felt like he was pretty strong, so I 5-bet clicked it on him. And, you know, as a kid that grew up watching Rounders and got like learned how to play the game with my stoner buddies in college, we have those famous scenes of Eric Seidel and Johnny Chan heads up in the World Series poker main event, and Seidel's giving him the look, you know, and I swear this was like, it felt this whole hand with Seidel was very surreal. It felt like it was out of a movie. It felt like out of Rounders, you know. He's giving me the same look he's given Johnny Chan. And like, I have to imagine that when I 5-bet clicking on him, that he's thinking about the ace-9 hand, because it's such a famous hand at this point, and there's very limited information on my play and like how I play at that point. I can't imagine Seidel has enough history with me to know that I only have aces in this spot. So he tanks and tanks and tanks forever, and eventually he's like, I'm all in, and ace king of spades. So luckily I didn't call pre-flop, otherwise
Yeah.
he would have not lost his whole stack. So I guess that exploit 5-bet click worked, but it's definitely not optimal. And then the flop just came like 8-4 deuce, all red. I mean, he was just like drawing dead on the flop. So not even a sweat. And then I secured half the chips in play, 6-handed. I mean, this is a super stacked final table. I mean, Eric Seidel, Lucky Chewy, JC Alvarado, Killian Kramer, Felix Bleicher, David Lopez. I mean, it was just like super stacked. There wasn't a soft spot in the lineup, honestly. Like they're all guys that I would actually rate higher than myself, to be perfectly honest. I have a lot of respect for that, all the guys that were in that lineup. So yeah, it was quite surreal. And then, you know, I came back 2 days later. We had a full day off, and then ended up shipping it. But it wasn't like I just rolled to the win. I mean, I wasn't even chip lead heads up at one point, but we made a deal heads up, and I ended up winning. And, you know, it's kind of interesting though, because this is probably the only World Series of Poker main event in modern history that had no live stream and no television production. So here I'd come back to the city in 2010, where like I'd won this flagship tournament, and it maybe got aired one time and then swept under the rug because of the connections to the robbery. They didn't really want to promote that tournament anymore. And then here now I'm winning like my flag. This is like really the flagship moment of my career, is like winning the gold bracelet with diamond encrusted, the World Series of Poker European Championship. And my family can't even watch for a live stream. And my dad, you know, he's like, oh, I was wanting to watch the TV show when it comes out, and then it just never came out. And I never really got an answer as to why it never came out. I really have no idea, but it seems super strange to me. I don't know if there's something about me that they didn't like or something, or if maybe everybody just left to Malta and the room was pretty empty, so it didn't look like it had a great atmosphere. Maybe that's why they cut it. But it would have been super nice to have that broadcast, not only to see the play and see the whole cards up, to know if I was making good decisions, but also just to share the experience with my family and loved ones, you know, so they could see the pressure of the situation that I handled myself in. So, but yeah, that was a super interesting tournament. There's actually another hand from that tournament.
Yeah, I was going to say the 5 hands to go. No, it's not, and all that.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, one day, I'm on a super tough table. Neil Farrell, John Juanda, Fedor Holtz, this guy, Elliot Smith, he's a pro from Canada, and myself are all at the table. And they announced the last 5 hands left in the night. I think this is maybe the end of day 2 or day 3 or something. And they announced 5 more hands of the night. So you know what they do? They say, oh, okay, when the button gets to this position, you know, that's when we're going to finish. So we play 4 hands, but Juanda busts in one of them. So the button gets to the position it's supposed to be at within 4 hands. And I'm about to post a small blind. And I'm like, wait, aren't we supposed to play 1 more hand? And like, we have bags on the table. Like, they're ready to bag up and be done. And we have bags on the table. And the guy in the big blind is like, no, we're done. We're done. Because he's like wanting to get out of pay the big blind, you know? And when I see him doing that, that's Elliot Smith, I was like kind of annoyed. I was like, oh, I don't want to let this guy get away with angle shooting his way out of the big blind. So even though it's against my incentive, because I'm the small blind, right? I still have to pay dead money. I call over the floor, and everybody's kind of annoyed at me because they just want to go home. And I'm like, no, we have 1 more hand to play. So reluctantly, they shuffle up and deal, take the bags off the table, and deal 1 more hand. Neil Farrell opens from under the gun. I'm in the small blind with ace queen of diamonds. I peel, and Elliot peels in the big blind. The flop comes 8-7-5 all diamonds, so I flop the nut flush. And I can't remember all of the specific action, but the turn's like a blank black card, and I get stacks in on turn against Elliot, who I had been arguing with about whether or not the hand should even take place, right? And he has 6-9 of diamonds for a flop flush, and I was super pissed. I was like, super pissed. You can't even imagine. Like I went back to my apartment across the street, and I was livid. I was just like, I cannot believe this is real. Like, karma is in the thing, you know, like this guy trying to angle shoot out of the big blind, and like, and then he just flops the joint against my nut flush in like an unavoidable spot. And I was super pissed, you know. And I was, saying karma doesn't exist because this guy, he should have been on the opposite end of that. Cards don't lie. And but then I came back the next day and I just kept getting aces over and over and over again. So maybe karma did exist, maybe not in that specific instance. So it was definitely the craziest poker hand I've ever played. I mean, I think the Vanessa Selps hand's obviously more famous, but like there's every once in a while there's like one of these hands where it's just like, wow, the setup for this was just like unreal. I remember looking at Fedor Holtz after the hand and his jaw was like on the floor. Like he couldn't believe what he just saw, And like everybody was just like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? Because like me and him were arguing. And then they just like deal us the sickest cooler of all coolers. And I lose like half my stack at the end of the day. So it was pretty wild. But, it's nice to overcome a hand like that and still persevere through the tournament. And obviously I ran very well. But to take it down after something like that happens, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, because again, like we spoke about with the robbery, the first EPT that you ever won, if that didn't happen, you might not have won the WSOP Berlin. So if that didn't happen against Elliot, you might not have won the tournament. It's these little things, as pissed as you were at the time, you got to look back on it and think, well, actually, if we didn't play that one more hand, I might have busted on the feature before the final table. So, you kind of, these things are sent to try us sort of thing,
Right. And actually, there's a parallel between all three of these situations we talked about. So the guy folding his hand face up the queens.
Yep.
Like I was quite angry that he was going to show his rail what his hand was. I didn't want them telling him, don't fold that hand, and I was angry. And then when we came back from the European Poker Tour robbery, I was quite angry. Right. And then the next day after I got nut flush to straight flush, I came back and I was quite angry. So there might be something to motivating me when I'm quite angry or feel like I have something to prove. So
maybe it's the Scottish inside you. When you're an angry bastard, you do well.
Yeah, maybe. Could be. I didn't have the beard back then, so I probably didn't look as scary.
Yeah, I mean, you have got the iconic, from what I've seen live and on some of the television stuff, you had the iconic, like the American policeman glasses. You had that look. Was there anything behind like that, like the glasses, or was it just a thing that you thought you didn't want to give anything away?
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like I have very honest eyes, so I don't want to be showing people my eyes. Also, I mean, I'm pretty stoned when I'm playing poker tournaments too, so I don't want people looking at me and being like, wow, this guy's baked out of his skull or whatever. But in Berlin in 2010, when I won that tournament, I would just sit behind my glasses like this, and sometimes I'd just take a little nap, and I'd close my eyes, and it would look like I'm paying attention and being intimidating. Plus, like, there's something to be said about having glasses and doing a stare down. Like, I remember Timex, like Mike McDonald, we got in this stare down competition where I had like my Oakley Holbrook glasses on, and he's staring right at me. And it's like, I just close my eyes, and he's not going to get a read off of me because I can close my eyes and I'm not getting nervous. And it looks like I'm staring right back at him. And he would just crack up in a smile because like, it was like reflecting off of, he was just staring back at himself, So, yeah, I mean, I did the Aviators, I did the Oakleys quite a bit. I don't know how much I really wear sunglasses anymore, but like just given the gravity of the situation, plus like when you're on a TV stage, it is extremely hot. Mm-hmm. It is extremely bright. It's extremely straining on the eyes. And when you run a bluff and you're sitting there and somebody's staring at you, you can definitely feel your pulse rising. You can feel yourself welling up in the eyes, and like, I just wanted to hide that kind of stuff. So that was kind of the idea behind it, but it wasn't always that way. Mm-hmm. Most of the time when you see me on a TV stage, I have sunglasses though, but through the rest of the tournament, that's not always the case. Usually I actually really enjoyed staring at people eye to eye too, especially once I made some enemies in the poker world. It was really nice to give them the stare down, like I was going to rip their head off, and I always called it mean mugging. Like you just stare at them like you're just mean mugging the fuck out of them, and you're just going to rip their head off. And even if you're folding, like it gets to you and you look down at 7 deuce and you just stare at the guy like you're going to rip his head off for a few seconds, and you fold it. And the next time he opens, you have aces and you do the same thing. Now the guy's thinking, oh, this guy was looking for a spot to come after me because he stared me down before. And that's kind of some of the live poker stuff that I miss, was like a little bit of messing with people's heads with body language and sort of playing into people's emotional states and stuff like that. So that's part of the stuff that I really miss.
Like
about
method to the madness sort of thing.
Something like that.
But over the years, through poker and through Magic the Gathering, you've made a lot of good friends. Carter Gill, Dylan Lindy, Anna Marquez, Stephen Chidwick, Jeff Madsen. A whole, but to be fair, that could be the who's who of top 50 poker players ever. Have you any stories about any of these, any good times or any party times or any dodgy times?
Well, I mean, Carter was, like I said, Carter was one of the first people I started traveling with. So when we lived together, he won a tournament to go to Sydney, Australia. And it was like, we hadn't traveled before, and we're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, he just won it sitting in our living room in Idaho, and then got to go to Australia, and he like went deep in the tournament and stuff. So when I started traveling with him, in fact, the very first poker tournament I ever went to was in 2008 at PCA. I was his guest. So he just added me onto his room, and I flew down with him. So that was the first big poker festival I went to. And I won my way into the main event. Of course, I didn't sell any action.
Yeah.
I didn't swap anything. But that was my first big poker tournament. So when I first started traveling, it was really a lot with Carter. Carter was being a little more proactive about getting on the live scene at that point, whereas Dylan was more playing online, being studious. So there was actually a separation there where I started traveling for the live circuit because I'd done very well online and I was bankrolled for it, and I started winning seats for things. Dylan wasn't doing that, but Carter was. So when I first started traveling, PCA, my first trip, the first trip I actually qualified in, where I got the hotel and everything, was in Costa Rica in 2008. And then that summer during the World Series, I did quite well. I got like 8th in one of the first bracelet events I played. But when I went to Europe, so you referenced 2008, going to Barcelona, the first trip. Carter was on that trip as well. And this was my first European poker tour event. It was massive buy-in. It was like 8,000 euros. So my cash for like 15 or 16,000 was basically like just above them in cash. And when I busted, we were getting pretty drunk, and we went up to my room, and I was just being an idiot. I took my alarm clock, because I was like pissed that I busted out of the tournament. I took my alarm clock and smashed it against the wall. Right. And I was like, fuck it. Like, whatever, they can charge me for it. Well, Carter took my phone out of the jack in the wall, went to my balcony, and threw the phone over the balcony onto the restaurant below us, where the director of the EPT and the events manager, I believe, and John Duffy were sitting at a table, and they're just like eating, and all of a sudden this phone smashes. It could have killed somebody, honestly. It was like super stupid and dangerous.
Yeah.
And the next morning we went out drinking. We just like left. We went out drinking all night. And the next morning I woke up with a hangover and a message on my phone from the director of the EPT saying, you need to have a conversation with me. And they threatened to throw me off the EPT on my very first trip. So that was pretty wild. But ultimately they saw who threw it out the window, and they gave Carter a stern warning and allowed me to continue to attend EPTs. But it was a few stops later, because when I first came to Europe, I wanted to play every European Poker Tour event. I wanted to play all of them in season 5, which I ended up qualifying online for all of them. But one of the stops was in Copenhagen, and Carter and I went out drinking. I had just won $230,000 playing a full tilt F-Tops 5K. I think I got like third in it or something. It was my biggest online score. And I had been up all night playing it. And I had a flight booked from the city I was in to Copenhagen that day. So I flew on no sleep, landed in Copenhagen, and there was the Poker Stars party that night. And you know how those Poker Stars parties go, especially with all you can drink for free. Usually they would get pretty wild. So we drank a bunch there, and we went out to some clubs afterwards, and eventually we were like making our way home, and we got in an argument with the taxi driver, because I had won a bunch of money. I was paying for a lot of things that night, and all the people in the taxi were like, hey, you need to pay for the taxi too. And I'm like, I'm not paying for the taxi. I'm tired of paying for things. The taxi driver heard us and got mad. He thought we were going to scam him. So he stopped at a green light and demanded that we pay right then. So I was like, bro, we're going to pay you. We're just joking around. Like, just take us back to the hotel. We'll settle up with you when we get there. And he made me like give him my credit card or whatever and swiped it. He's sitting there waiting for it to authorize. And I'm like, bro, it's authorizing. Just like, can you please drive the car and not be stopped at a green light? So he gets all upset, jumps out of the car, and Carter is in the front seat, right? And when the taxi driver gets out of the car, there's three of us in the back. Carter jumps from the passenger seat into the driver's seat of the taxi, pops the car in gear, and we're just like, whoa, we're not doing this. We're not stealing a taxi cab, you know? So we all get out of the car, and there's some words and, you know, some things that happen in between. And we hear, oh, he's calling the cops. So me and one of my buddies, we like run around the corner to get away. And it's just like a mile of fence line. Like there's nowhere for us to go. Carter just casually walks away. No problem. And when the police show up, the police are just there like instantly. They stop us and me alone get arrested. And I was supposed to play the European Poker Tour the next day. So I get arrested and I get taken into Copenhagen jail. This is the first time I got arrested in a foreign country. And they let me go after the night, but I was like livid. I was like, yeah, I was not very happy about it. So here I show up the next day after getting let out of the drunk tank, basically. And I have to go talk to the same director of the EPT from Barcelona, who is going to reprimand me for the phone incident. And he just looks at me. I go up to talk to him. He just looks at me. He's like, so I heard you had quite a night last night. And I'm like, yeah, do you think I could switch my starting days to like day 2? And he's like, yeah, no worries. And like, he didn't even care. He just thought it was funny. He's just like, look at you, man. You're a fucking mess, you know? And he was definitely right. I was a big mess back then. So yeah, most of my fun, like crazy drinking stories, I mean, I have a gazillion of them. Like, honestly, I could write a book about it.
Yeah.
Most of my best ones involve Carter Gill, who is definitely one of the funniest, most ludicrous people I've met. I don't want to mean this to be like ragging on these stories to be like ragging on him. Like, the guy's a legend, and like, I mean, he eventually got banned from the World Series for like throwing some girls out of a window in between days of the main event. And that was a big story. And he went viral for that hand where he had ace 10, and he told the guy he has ace queen. He's like, if you call, you're gonna need a queen. They deal the river card and it's a queen. And Carter's expression goes from like elation to sadness, and it went viral on like Yahoo. It had like 1 million plus views. I mean, it was like a big deal. So I mean, Carter is just like a super funny guy. Not anybody I'd really want to do business with, but just because his drinking's like out of control. But I had a lot of really funny stories from him from the beginning of my travels, but he didn't stick around for all that long, to be honest. You know, people come and go all the time.
Yeah, of course.
So,
yeah, I mean, you say you like a party. I remember, I think we celebrated in Malta your World Series of Poker Europe Berlin win, and that was an epic night. Jeff Madsen, yourself, Feeder Holtz, Jake was there, all the dealers were there, and it was,
I still think I have some pictures from that night around somewhere.
I have a few myself.
I'll have to find them and send them to you just to have a little trip down memory lane. But that was a pretty good night. We've had a lot of good nights drinking, though. Not just that, like we had some good nights in Prague.
Yeah, one I spoke to, we had Feraldo on the show in the second ever episode, and I'd said this to him. Me, Feraldo, and one of the Indian players, Arsh, were in Chapeau Rouge.
Arsh Grover, yeah.
Yes, and good lad, yeah, he's a fucking good lad. Well, I had never had absinthe properly. So me and Feraldo, to the bar lady, come on, let's get this absinthe. This is great. So unless if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. You get the spoon, you get the sugar in the spoon.
With the sugar, and you pour it over the sugar.
You light it.
You light it, and then you spin it, right.
So it freezes your throat so that you can't taste it properly. And then 10 minutes later, you're fucked. So obviously this hasn't hit me and Feraldo straight away. So we'll have another 2. And then we'll have another 2. And then a couple of Jaegers. But Arsh knows what the fuck happens here. So he's like, no, guys, I'm okay. I'll just have one. So then Feraldo's like, Kev's in the centre with a couple of his mates and their girlfriends. We need to go and see Kev. So in between him speaking to you and us getting a taxi, we went from way to fucked pretty quickly. So we turn up to this restaurant with you, your mates, and their girlfriends are. And Fraldo's like,
ceviche, or what is it? Solnice, Kolkovna, Solnice.
is that
Yeah,
what
that's our go-to spot. Yeah, I remember we were down in the basement, and then one of my buddies, we were doing absinthe shots, and I can't remember who the buddy was, but like we lit the things on fire, and then like he like spilled it on his arm and like caught fire. I can't remember who it was, honestly.
Yeah,
it was somebody that was like a big name back then, but it was so funny. We were like,
everybody should have been helping this guy because his arm was on fire, and it's oh my god. Me and Feraldo couldn't stop laughing.
Oh my god, it was.
We thought this was just fucking hilarious. Obviously, God help the guy. We hope he's okay and all that, but fucking hell. We just, you know how you catch a fit of giggles? Fuck me.
Yeah, did we go to Cross Club after that then too? We went to Cross Club to finish that night, right?
Yeah, we went to the Cross Club and...
man, that place.
that place is, 3 or 4 levels of absolute fun.
Oh my god, that place is degenerate. I mean, it's like anything is allowed in there. You know, you can do whatever you want, you know. And there's 6 different rooms with different kinds of music and foosball tables all over the place, and it's all very like steampunk. And like the liquor was like dirt cheap. I remember I'd go up to the bar and I'd order a round of shots for everybody, and they'd give me the price, and I was like, no, I'm paying for all the shots. And they're like, no, that is the price. And then eventually I was just like, okay, everybody at the bar, even if I don't know you, you're getting a drink. We made a lot of friends in that club. But yeah, that's my favorite club to go be a degenerate at, for sure.
Yeah, I do like Prague. Prague's one of my favorite places ever. There's a few of them, but Prague's up there.
Yeah, me too.
Phenomenal place. So, Kev, moving on. We've covered all the poker. You're in Canada now. How's Tinder been going, Kevin? Have you had any sort of deliveries?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a pretty interesting story. So when I obviously I smoke a lot of weed, and it's federally legal in Canada, and I crossed the border in my car, so I couldn't bring anything, obviously.
Yeah.
So when I got up here, you're supposed to go straight to your apartment to quarantine, which is exactly what I did. I didn't stop anywhere. I didn't even stop for gas. I just came straight here for quarantine. But then I'm like a day or two into quarantine, and I'm like, man, I'm stuck inside for 2 weeks. I really wish I had some weed. And I had called around all the shops to see if they did delivery. In fact, I had looked to see if they had drive-through, because I was thinking maybe they told me I could do drive-through food on the way up. So I was like, maybe they have drive-through weed I can grab, but they didn't have that. So I got on Tinder, and like, you know, Canadians kind of have a reputation for being weed smokers anyways. So I got on Tinder and I just started swiping right on like every girl I met. Every girl that popped up, and eventually, you know, I'd get quite a few matches, and I'd just ask them like, hey, do you girls know how I can get weed here, especially delivery weed? And one girl who was Scottish, very nice girl, she was like, do you need anything? And I was like, after we've been chatting for a while, I didn't lead with the weed, right?
I didn't lead with the weed.
Yeah, I could honestly use some weed, but like, if you know somebody that delivers it, I'd be happy to pay them. Like, I was just trying to find somebody that could deliver it to me.
Yeah.
You know? And she's like, oh, I'll bring it to you, no problem. So she like gets off her shift and goes and picks me up an ounce of weed. And I told her, you know, you can't see me. I'm in quarantine. Like, I can't see anybody. And she's like, that's fine. I'll just leave it at your door and give it a knock, and then that's fine. And then like later that night, I get a message from her, and it's just a picture of my condo door with a package right on the front. And like, she didn't even knock. I didn't even get to see her through the peephole or anything. She came and brought me an ounce of weed, didn't even ask me to pay for it. Right. So I was like, I'd like to pay you back, but I don't have e-transfer set up yet. I just got here, you know, like, I'll sort you out when I get out, if that's okay. And she's like, oh, nonsense, that's fine. So this girl brought me, what a lovely girl, brought me weed. I mean, she really just saved me. I don't know how I would be keeping my mind together, so staying indoors for 2 weeks by myself, you know. So that was pretty lovely. It just shows you the hospitality of the Scottish people, you know. Yeah, but it was pretty cute.
Brilliant. So what's next for Kevin MacPhee? say lockdown, quarantine, Corona just fucks off in the next couple of months. Have you got any plans that you want to do?
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to get into my own place before the holidays, before Christmas, especially. I've pretty much given up on the idea of getting home for Thanksgiving, because every time I cross the border, when I come back, I have to quarantine again for 2 weeks. So, and the friends I'm going to go stay with, I especially can't quarantine with them. I mean, it's not even part of the rules anyway. So if I do go back to the States, I need to come back and have my own place. So that's priority number one. Beyond that, you know, I've actually just got offered a job doing commentary for an Indian poker site. They're going to do some live streams. So I'll be doing some of that next month for Spartan Poker. Of course, Dylan and I went out to India for the PSL. I have a lot of friends from the Indian poker community from over the years. And then we got invited out to go play a poker sport league there a couple years ago, and made a lot of really good friends. And one of them offered me this job to do commentary. So that'll be coming up next month. Beyond that, I don't really have too many plans. I'm just going to be studying a lot of poker. I mean, like I said, it's kind of weird getting back into it after a couple of years off. I mean, the learning tools have just advanced so much, and like it's really a lot to catch up on. So I'm just trying to like not put too much pressure on myself to play a lot and study a bunch. But really, what I came up to Canada for is I want to ski. You know, like I always said, if I wasn't traveling the poker circuit, I would just ski all the time. I've been skiing since I was old enough to walk, basically, and it's just a real passion of mine. It's one of my favorite hobbies. It's good exercise, fresh air, and there's world-class resorts all around this area. So just going to get a ski pass to all of those, and hopefully make some friends to go out skiing with. If not, I'll just go out by myself. And that's really my only plan for the winter, is just ski my way through COVID. And hopefully by the time the spring hits, this will be gone. I don't think it will necessarily, but I think it could be going on for quite a bit longer, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I wish you good luck with that. Ladies that are in the area, Kev's free, single, and needs weed. You know, address in the bio. But it has been a pleasure, Kevin. Time's flown by, and hopefully we'll catch you at a bar somewhere or over the felt somewhere. You take care of yourself, and thanks very much, my friend.
I appreciate the time, Ross. Appreciate it.
Take care.